Hi, I'm Attorney General Dave Yost. Law enforcement sometimes requires force, and when an officer is involved in a use of force incident, particularly when there's injury or, God forbid, death, there are immense consequences. It gets complicated quickly. There's consequences for the officer involved, of course, and the civilians involved and their families, and for the agency that the officer works for, and for the justice system in general. We've seen in recent times how volatile these kinds of situations can be, and sometimes trust is a rare thing to find. The most important thing in responding to a situation where there is a use of force by the police is to make sure that we have the buy-in of everybody involved. All those people that are suffering the consequences need to feel that this thing was fairly investigated, thoroughly investigated, that there's nothing left out and nothing added in artificially, that it's just straight, true, by the book. You need to be independent and impartial and expert and experienced at these investigations. They need to be tested and trusted. That's where BCI comes in, the Bureau of Criminal Investigation, and the Critical Incident Response Team. The officers, the agents that staff this important unit at BCI do over 35 investigations a year, more than any other agency in the state. They know what they're doing. It's what they do all the time. And they've got the experience to be able to assure everybody in Ohio that any incident is properly, fairly, and thoroughly reviewed, that it in fact is independent and impartial, that it is conducted expertly based on experience, and that the results are tested and trustworthy.
My name is Mark Kohler. I'm a Special Agent Supervisor with the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, or BCI for short, which is the investigative arm of the Ohio Attorney General's Office. When called upon, I also lead the Bureau of Criminal Investigation's officer-involved critical incident response team that would respond to incidents such as officer-involved shootings and in-custody deaths involving local law enforcement agencies. BCI is the investigative branch of the Ohio Attorney General's Office. And that's an important distinction because as a state agency, we are completely independent from any of the local law enforcement agencies, such as police departments, sheriff's offices, and so forth. So that affords us the unique opportunity to conduct an independent, completely unbiased investigation in a professional, timely, consistent manner of any uses of force by those law enforcement agencies without any influence from the administration of that particular agency or the municipality for which they serve. So the investigation of an officer-involved use of force is quite possibly one of the most important investigations that we could possibly investigate. It has ramifications that are very wide-ranging, everything from the subject that was involved and their family, the officer involved and their family as well as just the community in general. They all have a stake in ensuring that the government is not exercising its ability to use force against its citizens in a manner that is unconstitutional. So we want to ensure that everyone involved, their constitutional rights are afforded to them, and the investigation is very thorough so that the prosecutor or the grand jury that are reviewing the facts and circumstances of the case have all of the information at their disposal so that they can make those determinations. When BCI responds to a scene, we bring a team of resources. This would include our Special Investigations Unit, which are essentially our investigators. They would do things such as write search warrants and execute those search warrants, interview witnesses, assist in collecting other items of evidence such as videos, surveillance video, things of that nature. Our Crime Scene Unit would process the scene of the incident. They would observe, collect, photograph, preserve evidence, and then ultimately that evidence would be submitted to the state crime laboratory for analysis, whether it's for ballistic analysis, which would be firearm-related evidence, or maybe even DNA evidence to see if a person touched a particular item during the course of a struggle. We would also bring cyber personnel to the scene. In most every instance nowadays, there's some sort of video component or other electronic component. So you might have cell phone videos, you might have surveillance systems, even things such as Ring doorbells that might be on a house. Those sometimes require specialized skills and expertise or equipment in order to preserve those videos and have them available for the investigation. So we have specifically trained and designated cybercrime personnel that can respond to collect that evidence and ensure that it is available for the prosecutor to review. We also have a criminal intelligence unit. They do a lot of analytics. They would also do things such as scouring social media for any information regarding the incident, which can be very helpful to us. Sometimes there are witnesses that we may not have identified at the scene who didn't come forward, but they might post something on social media that they had witnessed a portion of the incident. We'd like to talk to those people. We want to talk to anyone that believes that they have any relevant information to this use of force. The more perspectives that we get of that use of force, the far better our end product can be. Now, many times this takes a substantial amount of time to track down all of these various leads, but we would much rather be thorough and make sure that we have all of the available information for the prosecutor rather than shortchanging anyone that's involved by cutting corners just for the sake of having the investigation done quickly.
My name is Annette Mecklenburg. I'm the Chief of Police with the Cleveland Heights Police Department. I am a 30-year veteran with the police department and the last 4.5 years as the Chief of Police here. During my tenure as Chief of Police, I've had 2 occasions to work with BCI. The first one involved an internal investigation that I reached out to them to help us investigate. And the second occasion was a more recent incident involving a use of force by a police officer here on the Cleveland Heights Police Department. They were more than willing to step in and help us. I think the important part of that is by having a third agency, you have an impartial body look at the matter. On smaller departments such as Cleveland Heights, every officer knows everybody, and there can be those claims that, well, they went light on him or they didn't investigate because they like him as an officer and things like that. By having a neutral third party come in who doesn't know the officers, you're going to have more integrity in that investigation, and it's going to be more accepted, the outcome, whether it be good or bad.
Okay, I'm Reverend Dr. Jimmy Hicks Jr. I am senior pastor of the Start Right Church of God in Christ in Cleveland Heights, and I have worked on and off with the Cleveland Heights Police Department for the last 20 years as a chaplain, especially in today's climate and the different things that with the protests and with the way people feel and with the way people don't understand different processes. And I don't understand all the processes that are out there, but I do know that it makes people feel better when an outside agency can come in and investigate what the community sees as a wrong. And that's important because at this point, it's the community that needs to be calmed.
So the BCI investigation is purely a criminal investigation. We collect the facts and circumstances which we then hand over to the county prosecutors so that they can make the determination as to whether or not any criminal laws were violated in the incident that we're investigating. Now, the police departments themselves, they may also do administrative investigations to look at policies and procedures, tactics of the officers involved, to determine if the officers need to be disciplined or fired for their actions in a particular incident. But that is not what BCI looks at. We are solely looking at these incidents from the criminal standpoint to determine if any of the participants involved in the incident warrant being criminally charged under the statutes of the state of Ohio.
I am Gene Fisher. I'm the sheriff of Greene County, and I've been sheriff over 17 years. And third-party investigations in this county has been a blessing for my agency the entire time I've been here. We've called on BCI quite a bit over the years. And, when we've had an officer-involved shooting, which we did, it wasn't just a criminal investigation to see exactly what happened, but it was, we wanted to prove that what we did was right. We wanted the citizens to know it wasn't my guys doing an investigation, it was a third party coming in that, even though we work with BCI, there are other people involved in that. So it's a signal to the community that, we're very transparent is the word to use today. And we want to be transparent and we want to do things right.
At BCI, we have investigated cases that have both been determined by a prosecutor or a grand jury to have been lawful, the conduct by the officer as far as their use of force. However, we have also investigated cases where it was later determined by the prosecutor or grand jury that the officer's conduct was unlawful and resulted in criminal charges against the officer for crimes such as murder, manslaughter, or negligent homicide or assault. BCI has some very unique tools that they're able to bring, as well as specialized training and experience. For instance, our crime scene unit, they are full-time crime scene investigators. So what they do every day is simply processing crime scenes, which gives them a vast amount of experience. Whereas many local law enforcement agencies, crime scene processing might just be a secondary or an ancillary duty that they do as needed. Whereas our crime scene agents, that's all they do all day. They also have large amounts of equipment, specialized equipment for crime scene processing. One of those things would be a 3D scanner that shoots out laser beams, millions within just a few minutes, that documents the scene, taking these measurements, and then we're able to create a 3D diagram of the scene that is to scale, that we can actually go back and take measurements, and we're able to see items of evidence and the relationship of items of evidence to one another in a scaled environment. And being that it's a 3D rendering of the scene, we can look at it from many different perspectives. We can try to look at the scene maybe from the perspective of a particular participant or a witness as well. So it's very useful to help visualize what the area looked like at the time that the incident occurred.
Having an investigation by a third party is definitely something that everyone is looking for and would feel comfortable about. It's kind of like you don't put, in the minds of the people, you don't put the people in charge of the problem in charge of finding the problem. And so when you bring in outside representatives to look at and impartially say, these are the facts, this is what happened, this is what the cameras say, and this is what you've come up with.
So as the investigators, we usually have the unique opportunity to actually be at the scene ourselves physically. We can see the items of evidence and the relationships between those items of evidence. But people such as the community, the prosecutors, the grand jurors, they don't necessarily have that unique opportunity to come physically to the scene and see all of those items. What the 3D scanner brings to bear is it creates this model of the scene where we can actually walk through and help show those relationships between various items, where a particular item of evidence was located, where vehicles were located within the scene, the span of distances perhaps between various houses, or from one residence to another where an incident may have occurred. That's not something that photographs always do a very good job of showing, but being able to show it in a 3D environment, that helps to visualize that scene to those that didn't have the luxury of actually being there and seeing it first person. An additional resource that the Attorney General's Office has available to us during our investigations is the Ohio Organized Crime Investigations Commission, OCIC for short. They have forensic audio and video analysts on staff who we can send multiple video angles to them of one of these incidents, and they can synchronize those for us and create a video presentation. In this particular incident, we had dash cam video, we had surveillance video, we had body camera video, and we had cell phone video, and we were able to sync all of those up and create one presentation so that you could see the incident unfold from multiple different perspectives, all at the same time. They also have the ability to slow down or play it at full speed, the incident, so that you're able to delineate some of the minute details of what occurred. Many times these incidents transpire very, very quickly, and if you're watching it at full speed, it sometimes is difficult to recognize exactly what all occurred.
BCI has the tools readily available that I don't have here. Not only are they bringing third-party people to the scene, they are bringing tools to accurately measure, to do everything we need to present to a grand jury. They take care of that for us, and it is just a huge asset.
One perspective of a camera, you have to be very careful. Again, they're two-dimensional. They're not necessarily from the perspective that the officer would have seen watching the video. Many times you can kind of think of it as like a sporting event. In sports, you have multiple different referees that are on the field because just one referee alone can't possibly have enough perspective of everything that is occurring on the field to be able to accurately judge everything that occurred. You might even have multiple camera angles during a sporting event where you need to use slow motion and go back and forth and replay an incident over and over and over again to try to determine exactly what happened. And even in some cases with sporting events, you still are not able to discern exactly what occurred. In an incident like an officer-involved shooting, it's important for us to collect every available angle that we possibly could, put those all together to give us the broadest picture. There's still going to be things that we may not be able to see from those videos. Things like a subject tensing up as an officer is holding on to their arm. Video generally is not going to show that, but in speaking to an officer, potentially we could get that information through that interview. So we have to be very careful about video evidence. And not relying or jumping to conclusions just based on one video alone or even several videos. That's why we do a complete and comprehensive investigation and not just view a video and make a determination and call it a day. These investigations have many more aspects to them beyond just reviewing the video. We have to, again, collect all of that various information for the prosecutor to be able to make the determination as to whether or not the use of force was lawful. At BCI, we were very careful to try to ensure that our investigations are completely unbiased and that we're fair to all parties involved, whether it's the citizen or the law enforcement officer. We go so far as in our investigations, we don't refer to anyone as a suspect or a victim because in fact, both the citizen involved and the law enforcement officer could be a suspect or a victim or even both in some circumstances. So what we do in our investigations, we refer to the subject or the citizen that's involved as a subject, and then we refer to the officer as the involved officer. Again, avoiding that terminology of suspect and victim, which could give a connotation that we've already come up with a determination as far as who's at fault and who is not. And we go to great lengths to try to avoid that in our investigations.
Well, in our current climate, there is some people who have a distrust of the police. And to reassure our community that we are doing everything properly is one of the reasons that we reach out to BCI. It just lends some accountability of the officers to ensure that everything was done properly, and that the community can rest assured that their police department is doing the right thing and that their police officers acted appropriately. Any good police officer who does this job would not fear an outside agency coming to investigate them.
Given that most of the special agents at BCI have prior law enforcement experience prior to coming to BCI to be employed as a special agent, we certainly can run into the circumstance where an officer is called to a jurisdiction where they previously had worked, perhaps, or know some of the other officers that are involved. And we have policies in place at BCI, again, to ensure that we have that thorough, impartial, unbiased, independent investigation, that those agents, if they have any conflict of interest whatsoever with that agency, such as they formerly were employed with that agency or know the involved officers, then we would preclude them from being involved in that particular investigation, or certainly from leading that particular investigation to ensure the integrity of our investigation. After BCI is requested to respond to a scene to investigate, we dispatch special agents from around the state, generally from a geographic area as close to as possible the local law enforcement agency where the incident occurred. Being a statewide agency, we're spread out so that we can hopefully respond in a very timely manner, but given the time of day, the geographic location of a particular incident, it may be an hour, even 2 hours before the first BCI agent is actually able to arrive on scene. We would be sending agents from our crime scene unit, our special investigations unit, our cybercrime unit, all of whom are responding from various locations around the state of Ohio. Upon our arrival at the scene, we begin the process of documenting the scene. And in some instances, we may actually need to pause any processing of the scene to get a search warrant first, depending on the facts and circumstances of the case. In some instances, particularly if it's the middle of the night, by the time we draft a search warrant and then are able to get a judge who can actually review and potentially authorize that search, several more hours could potentially elapse. So many times there may actually be someone who died at the scene. Certainly we want to be very respectful of them and treat them with dignity. And we know that for the family members and the community in general, having that person removed from the scene as quickly as possible is in their interests. However, we have to be very cognizant of the fact that everything that we do has to be very deliberate. We have to do it within the confines of the law, and we have to be very thorough in what we do, because we only get one opportunity to document this scene as it actually is. And many times in those initial hours, we don't know what may be relevant to the use of force and what may not, because we haven't had an opportunity yet to review any video footage or interview witnesses or the officers that were involved. So we really have to be careful about balancing the respect for the person who has died and trying to get them back to their family members and loved ones as quickly as possible, but preserving the integrity of the investigation and ensuring that we have all of those facts that are available for the prosecutor or the grand jury to review, and making a determination if there was any crime that was potentially committed during the particular incident.
You know, I've had conversations with other chiefs in the area. You know, we have some regionalized groups, and we're all in agreement of and we're confident in the abilities of BCI to conduct a very thorough investigation. Many of us have used them over the years for a variety of different investigations. So when we had our most recent incident, which was an officer-involved shooting, I didn't hesitate to contact BCI. I knew that they would be more than willing to assist us, and I know that the investigation will be done right and thorough, and will help bring this to a resolution. So.
At BCI, our goal is to conduct a thorough, complete investigation in as timely a manner as absolutely possible. However, we can't sacrifice the quality of our investigation for timeliness. In many instances, these investigations can take many months, and there are a lot of factors outside of our control that would contribute to that. For instance, if there is a death involved, we have to await on the autopsy report from the local county coroner or medical examiner. Many times those reports can take 5 to 6 months to receive, primarily due to the toxicology that is involved. And with the backlog of the opiate epidemic, The toxicology labs are overwhelmed, and these are all labs that are outside of our control. They are not Attorney General Office labs. It's not the state crime lab that does these toxicology tests. It is the local coroner's offices or the labs that they contract with. So we have to await those results because many times those results can be very pertinent to our investigation. Such as if multiple officers fired, we would want to know which officers fired the fatal rounds. The toxicology can determine drug or alcohol influence, which may have affected some of the behavior that was exhibited during the course of the incident, and so forth. So it is very important for us to have those results. Beyond autopsy results, there are also other factors that are outside of our control, such as if we issue a search warrant for medical records for persons involved. That many times, depending on the size of the file and the hospital involved, may take a substantial amount of time to get that information to us to be able to review. Additionally, search warrants to cell phone providers or social media accounts. Those are, again, factors outside of our control. Our goal at BCI is to have our investigations, the portions which are under our control, complete within 60 days. That is the goal that we strive for each and every day because we know the importance in the community and for the subject's family and the officer's family as well to have these investigations done as quickly as possible. Certainly some cases are more complex than others, but all of the cases require a complete and thorough investigation. Even if there is clear video of what actually occurred, that is not where our investigation ends. We still have much more work to do throughout the investigation, such as trying to determine why these events transpired, the timeline or sequencing of events, as well as other factors such as maybe the citizens' proclivity towards violence against law enforcement. Maybe there's social media posts where they're parts of extremist groups, or maybe they were experiencing a mental health crisis and were suicidal and were looking to be killed by a law enforcement officer. On the other side of the coin, maybe this officer has a history of excessive use of force, and that's something that we need to explore as well. So they're never as open and shut as just looking at a video and making a determination. We have a standardized, consistent process that we use on all officer-involved shootings to ensure that we have a product that most closely represents the facts and circumstances of the case for the prosecutor to make that determination. One case that we investigated in 2013, an officer was shot by a subject after a pursuit, and we can see here where there are bullet holes in the windshield of the cruiser. The officer was still behind the steering wheel of the cruiser at the time. However, some of those shots are coming into the cruiser from the subject. Some of those shots are going out of the windshield, being fired by the officer. We have to make those determinations. There's multiple different things that we have to look at in a case like that. Also, the sequencing of events. Who fired first? Were the shots that were fired reasonable as far as the time frame? Where they fired quickly after the officer was shot at and so forth. So there are many different aspects that we still have to investigate, even when a case seems very open and shut or clean cut to the untrained eye. We still go through an entire process to thoroughly and accurately document every possible fact that we can regarding that use of force that we believe that a prosecutor or a grand jury or ultimately a jury might be interested in knowing as it relates to that particular incident.
People need to know that it's not going to be swept under the rug. And that's a reality. That has happened. People have have incidents against police and then have been told that, oh no, that police officer wasn't even on duty, or that police officer, or that car wasn't even on duty. I mean, so different things like that have happened and people have experienced it. And so to know that you have a credible agency that's going to come in, that's going to be impartial, and it's going to work for the people.
And we have such a good relationship with our community, and we want to continue to have a good relationship with our community. So in order for that to happen, the community needs to trust us. And I think this is one way of showing them that they can, that we're not afraid to have an outside agency look at anything that we do here, that we are operating the way that we should be, we are following the law, and we welcome the assistance. It can only help to improve our relationship with the community.
I would feel very confident calling BCI into any kind of use of force. The fact that we're going to get a thorough investigation out of BCI, we're going to get results that work with our Greene County Prosecutor's Office, and then the prosecutor can make a presentation to the grand jury. These are just boom, boom, boom that need to be done, and it sends the signal to the public that there's no cover-up, that we don't want to cover up. It sends the signal that we are transparent. And, it justifies what we've done. And then if we've done something wrong, we've done something wrong, and we need to cross that road too.
So there have been proposals throughout the leadership of the state of Ohio to make it more automatic to where BCI would have that jurisdictional authority to come in and conduct an investigation even without a request from a local law enforcement agency. Currently, BCI does not have automatic jurisdiction to just swoop in to an officer-involved shooting and begin investigating. We have to, under Ohio law, be requested in by a local law enforcement agency or prosecutor's office that has authority over that particular area, such as the county prosecutor's office, the municipal police department, or the county sheriff's department. Only upon that request do we gain the jurisdictional authority to be able to come in and conduct an investigation.